Let's go straight to the White House. Last night, unusually, the White House put out a late-night warning to Syria and the Assad regime about their chemical weapons. The president expected to meet with his national security advisor today.
The White House saying Syria's president is potentially preparing another chemical attack on his own people and warning there will be serious consequences if they do.
Robin, good morning to you. This is a very stern, very public warning that came overnight from here at the White House. They say that the U.S. has identified what it calls potential preparations for another chemical weapons attack by the Assad regime. They say this would lead to the mass murder of civilians, including innocent children. The White House says that it is now seeing similar activity to what prompted that U.S.-led airstrike on that air base back in April. This is the new warning from the White House right now. Take a listen. Quote, if Mr. Assad conducts another mass murder attack using chemical weapons, he and his military will pay a heavy price. Now, this is, as George said, a very unusual statement in that it comes from Press Secretary Sean Spicer. This is not coming from the Pentagon. This is not coming from the president himself. And Robin, we are told that high-level administration officials were caught completely off guard by this attack overnight, by this statement overnight.
Nearly 60 people reportedly died when a U.S.-led international coalition conducted an airstrike on an ISIS prison in Syria. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reports the Monday, June 26 strike killed 15 ISIS militants and at least 42 civilian prisoners. The group says bodies of the dead were seen spread out along a road near the city of Al-Mayadeen in eastern Syria, not far from the Iraq border. It adds some people remain missing and casualties could rise as the facility reportedly contained 100 civilian and ISIS prisoners. A spokesman for the coalition combating ISIS in Iraq and Syria has confirmed strikes were conducted Sunday and Monday on ISIS facilities in Al-Mayadeen. In an email to Reuters, he says, quote, the mission was meticulously planned and executed to reduce the risk of collateral damage and potential harm to non-combatants.
Ukraine's defense ministry has described a car bomb blast in Kiev in which a colonel died as a terrorist act. A passerby was wounded in the explosion, which occurred as Colonel Maxim Shapoval was driving through the center of the capital early on Tuesday morning. Car bomb attacks in Ukraine are relatively rare. However, since the start of fighting with pro-Russian separatists in the east, blasts outside the conflict zone have increased in number.
According to a Ukrainian federal agency, on Tuesday, the automatic radiation monitoring system at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant was the target of a cyber attack, causing monitoring to be carried out manually. The Agency for Control of the Chernobyl Exclusion Zone said in a statement, due to the temporary disconnection of the Windows system, the radiation monitoring in the area of the industrial site is being carried out manually. The statement went on to say that all technological systems of the station operate in the normal mode, but that in connection with the cyber attack, the Chernobyl nuclear power plant website is not working. A number of companies and agencies across Europe reported that they were under cyber attack on Tuesday, including Russian oil and gas company Rosneft and Danish shipping firm Maersk. The source of the attack remains unclear.
We are learning more about a massive global cyber attack. The hack hit Ukraine the hardest. A number of banks, companies, an electricity firm, the country's airport and government buildings have been affected. U.S.-based pharmaceutical company Merck confirms it's been compromised as well. It's been probably about an hour, and we heard about other places in Europe, a number of different countries and companies. What do we know so far about this cyber attack?
Well, essentially the attack started off in Kiev, but as you said, has spread around the world. It's a variation of a ransomware called Petya. This variation has been identified by Bitdefender as GoldenEye, and this one has 2 layers of encryption, which is a lot worse than most ransomware attacks go, because this one doesn't only encrypt your files, but it also encrypts your hard drive, making it harder to access your backups if you have any of those.
But in the meantime, this Fox News alert on a lockdown prompted by a possible active shooter at the Redstone Arsenal near Huntsville, Alabama. At the Army base, warning employees on its Twitter and its Facebook accounts to, quote, run, hide, fight. FBI has agents on the scene. However, they cannot at this point confirm that there is, in fact, an active shooter. Also, we have no reports of any injuries. But we're also hearing from locals that terrorism is not suspected. And the public information officer saying that the report of a possible shooter in one of the buildings on the base is a real event. And it's not part of a drill that was planned for tomorrow. More than 30,000 people work there. We're following this story. We'll bring you any new information as it becomes available.
U.S. officials say Washington is poised to declare China among the world's worst offenders on human trafficking, placing it alongside the likes of North Korea, Iran and Syria. The downgrade to the lowest ranking of Tier 3 is expected to be announced by Secretary of State Rex Tillerson on Tuesday during the annual Trafficking in Persons report to Congress. The move is likely to aggravate tensions with Beijing and hinder efforts by President Trump to get his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping to help rein in Pyongyang's nuclear and missile programs. The reason for the downgrade is not yet known, but in the State Department's report last year, it said Beijing did not meet minimum standards for tackling human trafficking, but that it was making efforts. The official's comments came about a week after Trump tweeted that China's efforts to deal with North Korea had not worked out.
As the United States pressures China to enforce United Nations sanctions on its ally North Korea, Washington is concerned that Russia could provide support to Pyongyang and fill any vacuum left by Beijing, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Nikki Haley said on Tuesday. While Washington has urged countries to downgrade ties with Pyongyang over its nuclear and ballistic missile programs, a cross-border ferry service was launched in May between North Korea and neighboring Russia. Haley said, "We just need to keep the pressure on China, we need to keep our eyes on Russia, and we need to continue to let the North Korean regime know we are not looking for regime change, we just want them to stop the nuclear activity."
Following the tragic death of American student Otto Warmbier at the hands of his North Korean captors, now lawmakers fear the Hermit Kingdom may be holding another student. Republican Utah Senator Mike Lee and Representative Chris Stewart believe a student of Brigham Young University who disappeared while hiking in China in 2004 deserves to be considered while South Korea's president meets with President Trump. In a letter to the president, the two lawmakers urged Trump to look into the disappearance of David Louis Snedden and consider North Korea as potentially responsible. The lawmakers are staking their claim based on a South Korean agency that specializes in North Korean abductions, which reports the student is being forced to teach English. The message comes just a week following Warmbier's return, which the family has credited President Trump for helping catalyze.
On Sunday, a subway train derailed near a station in Harlem, frightening passengers and resulting in a power outage as people were evacuated from trains along the subway line. According to the Fire Department of New York, a handful of people were treated for minor injuries following the derailment around 10 a.m. Delays were consequently reported throughout the subway system. According to several passengers interviewed by local TV stations, the train vibrated wildly and bucked as it went off the rails. In the past 5 years, the number of subway delays have tripled to 70,000 per month, while several high-profile incidents have occurred in recent months, including subway trains stuck in tunnels for an hour or even more. In April, a power outage backed up trains around the city and closed a key Manhattan station for 12 hours.
Alex, as you can see behind me, it is still very much a scene. This is where many of those passengers got off the derailed train. They all tell me they felt a jolt, smelled smoke, and thought they were going to die. Craig Scheel had the ride of his life this morning when his train derailed.
It's like riding on the back of a bull. I mean, you were going up and down, side to side.
It was like moving side to side, and then the power went out, and you could see sparks going everywhere.
Trapped in the dark, passengers were then asked to exit the train and walk along the third rail, which had been shut off.
Is everybody all right?
They were all ushered upstairs, single file, to finally exit the subway at 125th Street in Harlem. Around 9:45 this morning, social media lit up with frightening photos and descriptions of what happened.
We had to walk in the tracks to get out. Yeah. There were some sick people, pregnant people, babies. So it was a little scary, but for the most part, it was, just had to be patient.
People were going crazy, and it was just very chaotic and traumatizing.
Oh my God, it's hot, very hot.
It was crazy. We were stuck for about over hours. It was like a lot of people. It was hot
and sweaty.
I walked the tracks, very scary. The firemen helped me though, but it was very scary. I've never experienced anything like this in my life, and I've been in New York all my life.
Thanks, MTA.
On Tuesday, workers installed a Ten Commandments monument outside the Arkansas Capitol, 2 years after the privately funded statue was approved on state grounds. A 2015 law required the state to allow the display near the Capitol, and a state panel last month gave final approval to its design and location. The American Civil Liberties Union said it plans to file a lawsuit in federal court challenging the display, calling it an unconstitutional endorsement of religion by the state.
Yale University has sued the state of Connecticut over rules it says limit the number of gender-neutral bathrooms it can designate on campus. The Ivy League school said in the lawsuit it wants to designate all single-occupant restrooms at its law school as gender-neutral. But the plan would run afoul of the state building code, which does not count gender-neutral bathrooms when it assesses whether a public building has enough toilets. The suit was filed on Friday in Connecticut Superior Court in New Haven after the university received complaints from law school students. Yale has asked the state to drop requirements that single-user restrooms have an assigned gender label.
Germany might be changing its tune on same-sex marriage. The land of bratwurst and beer is one of the few Western countries that doesn't allow same-sex marriage. Instead, same-sex couples can enter civil partnerships. But a recent comment by Chancellor Angela Merkel indicates views could be shifting. In an interview, she said the German parliament should have a conscious vote on same-sex marriage. That basically means members of parliament should vote according to their personal beliefs and not feel pressured to vote along party lines. And Merkel's party hasn't been too keen on the idea of same-sex marriage in the past. The party has long advocated for, quote, family values, and Merkel herself has opposed giving adoption rights to same-sex couples before. A majority of Germans are in favor of legalizing same-sex marriage and have been for a while. Some have criticized Merkel's recent move as a political ploy, saying it has nothing to do with values. Still, Germany's minority ruling party, the Social Democrats, are pushing for a vote to happen sometime this week.
If you're not a fan of bugs, then this story might make you a bit squirmish. Challengers in southern China's Yunnan province squared off against one another to see who could wolf down the most bugs in a 5-minute period. Their plates were piled high with bamboo worms, locusts, dragonflies, and silkworm pupa. A clear winner emerged after one man managed to consume more than 1 kilogram of cooked crawlies. The prize, a 24-karat gold bar. News website Yunnan.cn reports other contestants made some decent attempts as well. One woman who gobbled down half a kilogram explained that she could have eaten more bugs if they hadn't been so dry. Plates full of bugs are not unusual in the region, with insects like grasshoppers and cicadas often served up at local restaurants. So would you take the bug eating challenge?
Residents of a small South African village say witchcraft is to blame for what one pregnant sheep gave birth to. We caution viewers that the following images may be disturbing. Some locals in the Eastern Cape village of Lady Frere say this creature is the result of bestiality and the devil's handiwork. Photos of the animal recently went viral on social media. The Eastern Cape Department of Rural Development and Agrarian Reform confirmed the photos were real June 21st. Dr. Lubabalo Marabi, Chief Director of Veterinary Services, said the animal is actually just a stillborn lamb. Marabi said the unfortunate lamb's father was a sheep, not a human, and that the deformities were likely caused by a viral mosquito-borne illness. He added that the animal was probably infected by the Rift Valley fever virus during early development. Marabi encouraged farmers to vaccinate their animals to avoid future deformed offspring.
After a ruling by the European Court of Justice on the case of a French man who claimed that a hepatitis B vaccine caused him multiple sclerosis, many headlines across Europe read vaccines can be blamed for illness without scientific proof. In response, alarmed experts have pointed out that no link between the vaccine and MS has ever been scientifically established, and have expressed concerns that the Luxembourg-based court's decision will result in a large number of spurious lawsuits. However, experts on liability law remain divided on what the court's decision, announced on June 21st, will mean for medical product liability in Europe. Some claim the decision balances individuals' rights, while others worry that the ruling ignores certain kinds of scientific evidence.
Google may be dominant, they're practically a verb, but with the EU slapping the search giant with a massive fine, a warning. Give everyone a fair shot too. The EU's antitrust chief announcing a record-shattering $2.7 billion fine against Google for illegally directing searchers to its own shopping platform. If someone searches, say, cuddly toys, the company offers price comparisons, which the EU claims favor their own results over their competitors. Regulators say the juggernaut better change its ways within 90 days or face additional penalties. The Silicon Valley business will have the ability to appeal the decision, which stemmed from a case dating back 7 years. But that's not the only potential headache for Google. Their Android mobile operating system is facing scrutiny, as is their ad placement service, AdSense.
In case you're counting, Facebook just hit its 2 billionth user mark. 2 billion people use Facebook. I think it's just my daughter, like 2 billion times. But man, that's amazing. A little more after this.
The ubiquitous cash point, or ATM, is celebrating its 50th anniversary. The first to insert the drastic plastic was British comic actor Reg Varney in Enfield, London on June the 27th, 1967. The hole in the wall was invented by John Adrian Shepherd Barron, and as with most good ideas, it came while he was in the bath, inspired by a chocolate bar dispenser.
Italy is having to fork out up to 17 billion taxpayer euros to wind down 2 failed banks there. Now, we asked people whether they're ready to bail out more of the bankers.
This is money that's being taken from our pockets. Why should we have to worry about saving the failing banks? There are so many other priorities. Hospitals, schools, and small businesses are in crisis. If politicians want to help the Italian economy, they should start with the middle class, not saving the banks. We've had enough.
No. It's not right. The banks do not deserve to be given this money. The people who made the banks fail should be held responsible.
I am very angry about this situation. I work hard to earn money. We can't go on like this.
It's completely immoral. We're all angry because we keep being forced to pay. Bank managers should take responsibility for these failures, not small-time savers like me.
Italy will get some help from the country's biggest retail bank, Intesa Sanpaolo, which will take on the good assets. The rest, those being hived off into a toxic bank at taxpayer expense.
Hong Kong is synonymous with high-rise buildings and high-stakes finance. Last month, a plot of land used as a car park changed hands for nearly 3 billion euros, or more than 60,000 euros for a single square metre. But not everyone is sharing in the wealth. An Oxfam report says Hong Kong's richest 10% now earn 44 times what the poorest 10% do. And the government says that gap is at a nearly 50-year high, thanks to a real estate bubble. A short distance from the skyscrapers, it's a different world. But here, too, housing prices have nearly doubled since China took control of the territory 20 years ago. Those living on subsistence wages have no chance of normal accommodation.
We find that many Hong Kong poor people or elderly people living in very small cubicles or in subdivided flats in Hong Kong.
Wealth inequality was one of the reasons behind vast pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong 3 years ago. But now, with the problem growing more severe, the government is under pressure to take action.
McDonald's wants to replace more cashiers with kiosks, and Wall Street is cheering on the move. Shares of the fast food chain hit an all-time high on June 20th as investors bet that new self-ordering machines will boost sales. Analysts at Cowen raised their rating on McDonald's shares to outperform from market perform. The firm also upped its price target to $180 from $142 a share and lifted its same-store sales estimate to 3% growth from 2%. Cowen said the restaurant chain's planned technology upgrades could help business. Mickey D's wants to give customers what it calls the experience of the future by offering digital ordering kiosks in 2,500 restaurants as well as table delivery. It also plans to roll out mobile ordering across 14,000 U.S. locations by the end of 2017.
Natural beauty generally doesn't come with a financial cost, but some researchers argue the Great Barrier Reef has a pretty big price tag. A new report commissioned by the Great Barrier Reef Foundation argues the reef is worth an estimated $42.4 billion US. That's more than 12 Sydney opera houses. That number could have big implications for the Australian economy if the reef continues to be damaged or destroyed by climate change. The report concludes that the reef contributed $4.8 billion and 64,000 jobs to the Australian economy between 2015 and 2016. Mostly from tourism. And the Great Barrier Reef has been under a lot of stress lately. 2 major coral bleaching events have left parts of the reef damaged or nearly dead since 2016. By putting an economic value on the reef, the report's authors hope to influence decision-making about preserving the reef. The damage the reef has taken over the past 2 years doesn't mean that it's doomed, but there are still a number of factors threatening the reef and very few solutions for saving it.
3 of these planets, marked in green, are in the habitable zone.
NASA has undertaken an enthusiastic search for alien life, and according to the hacker collective Anonymous, the agency is on the verge of confirming its existence. That assertion was made in a video recently published to the YouTube channel affiliated with the group. In support of its claim, Anonymous cites NASA's recent exploration efforts and parts of a NASA Associate Administrator's April testimony to the House Committee on Science and Space. He said in part, "Our civilization is on the verge of discovering evidence of alien life in the cosmos. Taking into account all of the different activities and missions that are specifically searching for evidence of alien life, we are on the verge of making one of the most profound and unprecedented discoveries in history." Of course, on the verge is relative. While NASA has discovered a number of promising places to look for life, including Saturn's moon, Enceladus, and the newly found solar system TRAPPIST-1, which appears to have a handful of planets in the habitable zone, studies of those bodies are in their early stages. Also, though Mars is believed to have once had conditions capable of supporting simpler life forms, proof of its past existence has thus far been elusive.
You definitely wouldn't sleep on this flight. Alaska Airlines said Monday it will take one group of lucky passengers on a flight to chase the Great American Eclipse. That extremely rare solar eclipse is August 21st. All of the continental U.S. will see the moon block at least part of the sun, but millions along a path from Oregon to South Carolina will see a total solar eclipse. Those on this special Alaska Airlines flight get a guaranteed unobstructed view of the cosmic event. The catch? The passenger list is invite only, except for 2 seats. The airline will launch a contest July 21st, and the winner gets to bring a guest. Alaska Airlines didn't immediately say how the winner would be chosen, but considering the continental U.S. won't catch another total solar eclipse until 2024, you might want to give it a shot.